Amaravati, on the right bank of the river Krishna, 34 kilometers to the north of Guntur, is world famous for its Mahastupa. It was the most stupendous monument of ancient India, the greatest architectural achievement of Buddhism. Amaravati was a great international center of Buddhism for nearly 1600 years from the 3rd century BC. Dhanyakataka, to give Amaravati its original name, rose to glory as the fortified eastern capital of the later Satavahana monarchs. The ancient metropolis, which extended 3.5 miles in length, is now represented by the village of Dharanikota, a little to the west of Amaravati. Dhanyakataka is regarded as belonging to the 5th century BC. The celebrated temple of Amareshwara gives its name to Amaravati. The seat of power, Dhanyakataka, became the focus of a superbly impressive art, glorifying the stupa in its many variations. In its external impact, it influenced the art styles, beginning to be born, of Annam, Thailand, the Indonesian archipelago of Borneo, Sumatra, Java and Celebes, Sri Lanka and Afghanistan. The Andhras, a tribal people at the daybreak of Indian history, had emerged in the valley of the Godavari and Krishna rivers as a powerful race. On the breakdown of the Mauryan Empire about 276 BC, the Satavahanas rose to ascendancy, becoming masters at the height of their power of extensive dominions across the Deccan, from sea to sea. They loomed over the stage of Indian history, ruling for a total of 456 years. The Mahastupa was the product of the political opulence of the Satavahanas and the unprecedented economic prosperity of the merchant class. A flourishing international trade brought in Roman gold and silver coins, discovered in thousands through seaports at the mouth of the navigable river Krishna. At Gudivada near Machilipatnam, a coin with the image of a Mediterranean ship has been discovered. The stupa at Amaravati was verily the Mahachaitya, the great, the largest of all, represented in the model in the courtyard of the museum at Amaravati. In diameter 168 feet, it stood to a height of about 90 to 100 feet. The drum, 6 feet high, was in tiers, panelled with elaborate slabs, udhapata, of a variety of carvings of scenes from the Jatakas and incidents from the life of the Buddha. The drum came up later, about the 2nd century, facing the gates at the 4 cardinal points in Aryaka platforms. On each platform stood 5 decorative monoliths, Aryaka kambhas, 10 to 14 feet in height. For about a third part of its height, the dome was faced by sculptured stones with decorative friezes above them of scenes of worship. Then the spring of the dome curved hemispherically, ornamented with gilded friezes at the top of the dome. The harmika was structured in a railing 24 feet high, square. At its center was an octagonal pillar, the shaft for the cluster of umbrellas. The stupa was surrounded by an exquisitely ornamental railing of unsurpassed beauty, 192 feet in diameter, forming a processional path 11.5 feet wide. The railing was entered by opening 6 feet wide at the 4 cardinal points. At each opening, the coping was topped by 4 seated lions, and the segments of the rail projected in 3 right angles, forming the entrance. The world-famous sculptures were produced at Amaravati in a luxurious bursting into flower of voluptuous forms of plastic beauty, grace, and rhythm. In 1794, Raja Vasireddy Venkatadri Naidu, a turbulent zamindar of Chintapalli in the Guntur district, resenting the surveillance of a battalion of the East India Company, removed himself to Amaravati with his following. In searching for building materials for his program of construction, Venkatadri Naidu laid open the celebrated stupa at hand. Colonel Colin Mackenzie, to be Surveyor General of India, made visits to Amaravati in 1797 and in 1818. After his discovery of the Mahachaitya, Sir Walter Smith in 1845, Robert Sowell in 1877, James Burgess in 1881, and Alex Naria in 1888-1909 made excavations of the stupa. But the most spectacular finds were made in a clearance operation in 1958-59 by R. Subramaniam and K. Krishnamurthy of the Archaeological Survey. During January to March 1974, I. K. Sharma executed a systematic excavation, bringing to light material postulating 5 main phases of the stupa. The recovered sculptures are distributed in several museums. In the Government Museum, Chennai, the British Museum, London, the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, the Archaeological Museum, Amaravati, and the Indian Museum, Kolkata. Events in the life of the Buddha. Sumedha, the Bodhisattva, resolves to take his final birth on earth as Gautama. Accompanied by celestial musicians, Sumedha descends in a heavenly chariot to enter the body of Maya. Maya delivers the divine child in the Lumbini gardens. The 4 Mahabrahmas receive the child on a golden net. Asita examines the mark of the child and predicts that he would be a Chakravarti. Grown up, Gautama contemplates the woes of life and in the dead of night decides to renunciate. Kantaka, the horse, and Chandaka, its groom, carry him away from Kapilavastu. Gautama does penances for 6 years, after which, at Uruvela, he accepts rice and milk from Sujata. Mara, the evil one, and his host attack Gautama, but flee utterly vanquished. He sits under the Bodhi tree, resolved not to rise until he attains enlightenment. Ultimately, Gautama attains enlightenment. In due course, the Buddha visits Kapilavastu. Rahula, his son, inquires of him about his inheritance and is eventually converted. The Buddha finally attains the Mahaparinirvana at Kusinagara, the event symbolized by a stupa. Other motifs featured in the sculptures are the bath of Queen Maya, King Suddhodana visits Maya in the Ashoka grave, Prince Siddhartha in his harem, a marital procession, a fat dwarf caryatid, the Chakravartin producing a shower of coins, a flying Gandharva carrying a bowl, the Buddha preaching, the translation of the bowl of the Buddha, women adorning the Buddha, and elephants adorning the stupa. The Amaravati Museum consists mainly of the Amaravati sculptures excavated by Alexander Rea during his painstaking excavations in 1888 and 1889, with some discoveries of James Burgess. The Buddhas. Worship of the Bodhi tree, Dharmachakra, and the stupa. Padmapani. Purnaghata. Attendant. Sibijataka. Garland bearers. Dampati. Hastalekha. Vaishali. Sravasti, favorite resorts of the Buddha. And other interesting exhibits. The museum attracts to this day many pilgrims and large crowds of tourists and students on holiday. The inscriptions of Amaravati are mostly votive, a key to the very widespread and corporate devotion the great monument inspired among all ranks and sections of the people. The languages of the inscriptions were Prakrit, with a close affinity to Paisachi. Amaravati attracts even today Buddhist pilgrims thronging from the countries of Southeast Asia. The lofty temple of Amareshwara stands on the southern bank of the Krishna, at a spot where the river curves from north to south, considered sacred for temple building. According to tradition, the temple, Buddhist in origin, was put to Hindu worship. The Moola Virat is a long vertical cylinder of white marble, originally an Aryakastambha, the Buddhist Mahachaitya at Amaravati. There still exists a white marble of early Buddhist sculpture. The mouth of the river Krishna, Amaravati, the international lighthouse of Buddhism in its time, was the terminus for the dissemination of the faith in the kingdoms of Southeast Asia. From Pongtuk in the province of Ratburi in Thailand have come bronze statuettes of the Buddha, unmistakably Amaravati. From Korat and Nakhon Pathong. Buddha images of Amaravati vintage are great in number in the Indonesian archipelago. A bronze from South Jember, eastern Java. Another larger and more beautiful found at Sekendeng in Celebes. A third from Kota Bangun in Borneo. A colossal stone Buddha and a bronze Buddha from Palembang in Sumatra, a center of Buddhist learning and one-time capital of the kingdom of Sri Vijaya. But the most important of the Amaravati-influenced bronzes from Southeast Asia is the Buddha from Dongduong in Annam of the 3rd century. The spring force of both sculpture and architecture in Sri Lanka, from the time of Dattagamini, 101 to 77 BC, was the school of Amaravati. The great Ruvanaveli Stupa at Anuradhapura reproduced the typically Andhra Ayaka platforms at the cardinal points. The paintings of the celestial females of the Sigiriya fortress are manifestly derived from the nubile damsels of the Amaravati reliefs. For a millennium from the 4th century, the history of Amaravati as a center of Buddhism was one of decline. Xuanzang, visiting Amaravati in the middle of the 7th century, found the Buddhist monasteries deserted. Amaravati can be reached by road or river from Vijayawada, by road to Guntur and thence to Amaravati, a distance of 35 kilometers. The journey by road from Vijayawada to Amaravati shorter through Satyanapalli. The journey from Vijayawada to Amaravati by the river Krishna is pleasurable and of scenic interest. This is the signal art of Amaravati, its undying glory, resplendent in the firmament of time.